Hello and welcome to the February 8th weekly JupyterLab call. And today we have 16 people on the call. And we're doing the normal agenda-driven call, but then at the end of the call, we're going to pick up our final couple triaging sessions for JupyterLab 4 to make sure all of the issues are correctly categorized. So why don't we get started? First person on the agenda today is Jason W.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Weil. So 4.0 release plan follow-up, there was a bit of ambiguity last week where Mike and I both published separate proposals for the 4.0 stuff. So, and then I proceeded with mine unaware of Mike. So I apologize for that. I've been following up with Mike directly about this. The current plan I linked in an issue comment on JupyterLab 9647, which is the 4.0 release plan. What I did last week was move all unassigned issues that were in the 4.0 milestone to 4.10, and then a few people, notably Mike and Frederick, moved issues that belonged in 4.0 back from 4.10 to 4.00. I'm not going to be doing that going forward. That was just a one-off thing to move like issues that were in the 4.0 milestone that may not have belonged there to a future version. Going forward, the idea is that for enhancements, those should be ready by the end of this month. Like, we want to get new features frozen in good shape by the end of this month. For bugs, for newly filed bugs, we're going to be taking a look at the weekly triaging, which is Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And consider whether these are going to go in for 4.0. They don't have to have an assignee. That was an area of confusion. After some conversation, new issues in 4.0 don't need an assignee, but we do need to work quickly to find assignees, find owners for these. We're going to reach a point at some point this spring where either somebody's got to fix a 4.0 bug, or we have to accept that it's going to go to a future version. I'm curious about what other folks have had experience with, but like, that's been my experience working in releases in other types of software. Thoughts about like, at what point do we start like moving unowned bugs from 4.00 out to 4.10 or later?
I think there might not be a generic answer. If the bug is the kind of bug that is a showstopper, we need to have individuals looking at it make that call. So we wanted to release JupyterLab 1 because all the features existed, but we had a bug that it just rendered so slowly for some notebooks in Firefox that we thought it was unacceptably slow, and that became a showstopper. So I think there isn't like a generic answer here. There might be some bugs that push, but then again, we have a really, really hard JupyterCon deadline here. So it might instead just light a bunch of fires under a whole bunch of people. But whatever it is, some bugs might really need frantic attention quickly, or they can be punted back. I don't know. Does anyone else have a thought?
The end result will just be the bugs that got in time for the release are the ones that ended up being 4.0, right?
Right. I mean, I've never worked on a piece of software that shipped with 0 bugs. Eventually you reach a point where something has to be like a known issue. Somebody pointed out there's also a 4.0x milestone, which I've seen before in my experience, where if something came in and we should do it in like a 4.01 or 4.02 release, but it shouldn't block the 4.00. Someone pointed out there's very few items that are in 4.0x. Might be worth taking a look and see if they truly belong in 4.00. But that's another option if we don't want to wait for the next minor release.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Darren said, my sense is that as we get closer human judgment on a per issue basis becomes critically important. And it's important that we have consensus among the council, or the part of the subset of the council that's doing that activity. And so, you know, I think it makes sense to do some broad passes, but we can't ever rule out the possibility for human judgment, because yeah, we don't, and this is what makes open source fun and exciting, is that even though we set aspirational dates for releases, we don't really do date-based releases. And it's entirely possible that a month or two from now, we would say, 4.0 is not ready, we're delaying until after JupyterCon. And I'm not advocating for that, but certainly that has happened plenty, making a face. Just historically with JupyterLab and many other Jupyter sub-projects, that's happened many, many times. And so I think it's helpful to have approaches that allow us to triage issues in bulk, but I want to make sure we don't lose the ability to use human judgment to make calls.
Any other thoughts?
One more plug for, if you're interested in triaging new issues, I always welcome additional informed feedback at the weekly triage meeting, which is Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Great, thanks, Jason. Next up is me. This will be short. So I sent a message to the JupyterLab Council mailing list, asking for volunteers from the council to represent the official JupyterLab sub-project and give a talk on JupyterLab 4 at JupyterCon. And, you know, I was a bit too, I said up to 4 people, but actually it's only a half-hour call. So I think 2 is probably the optimal number here. And 1 person volunteered, I think maybe 1 more person, and that would be perfect. So if you are on the council and got that message, please respond. Going forward, we're going to try to more formally have sub-project representation in JupyterCon, but as the new governance is very new, and as this JupyterCon is imminent, we're not doing all of the sub-projects presumably this year, because it would just be too much to organize. However, we really ought to have a JupyterLab talk, and I'm glad we've got at least 1 volunteer so far. That does remind me though, it's been a while since we nominated anyone to the JupyterLab Council. So if you're on the council and you know of someone who ought to be nominated, now's a good time. We should get back on that. Please be inclusive and expansive in your view of who belongs on the council. People who participate, who you've seen working on this for a little while, they probably ought to have a say.
Darian, can you clarify to folks how someone on the council would nominate someone?
Yes. So in the mailing list, 1 person says, I nominate so-and-so, and a second person says, I second the nomination. And we can try the forum-based GitHub private repo voting, but really it's probably okay to do as we've done with most of the others, which is have the votes be within that same thread in the message group. That's fine. We don't publish these particular vote results because they're about people, but obviously if a person is nominated and within a week gets the number of votes to pass, which is oh wait, it's not a number of votes to pass, is it? It's just that the number of votes coming in, the majority of them have to be in favor, I believe. Is that right, Brian?
You got to have a quorum and then a majority vote of the votes cast.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So yeah, basically it takes about a week and a day or two. And we only should do one at a time because the next nominee should be someone who was also considered by every member of the council. So we don't want like 3 nominations outstanding. We do them sequentially. Yeah, I guess that's it. So yeah, please do those things. And my third point is I will not be here 2 weeks from today. So somebody please, would you host this call? If you are happy to, just put your name in the bullet point on the agenda. And with that, I'm happy to pass it on to Brian.
Thank you for letting me go real quick. I'll keep it short. I saw that I think Frederick and some others maybe have been working on a privacy policy for JupyterLab. I saw the backport PR here. I got pinged unsolicited feedback by a JupyterLab user who expressed concern about this, and their feedback was basically it was vague and unclear about what they did in Jupyter as a user triggered the various third-party groups to collect data from them. So we say that we don't collect data, but external web services does. So GitHub Pages, NPM, PyPy, Unpackage, and so I think it's great for us to acknowledge that. But in their minds, we were acknowledging if you just download, like, if you happen to be using JupyterLab, even if someone else installed it, these third parties may be collecting data from you. And so I think it would be helpful to connect the dots between what user behaviors trigger those third parties to trigger. So for example, say, if you pip install JupyterLab, that will collect data on that. If you know, when would NPM be triggered? When would GitHub Pages be triggered to collect data? I think most of the details are there, but I think we need to connect the dots a little more on the privacy policy. That's it. I can open an issue to track this though.
Is the linked issue appropriate, Brian? The one that's in the chat?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a merged PR.
No, Mike has added another issue that was open earlier today or yesterday. But basically, the user also was referencing to a version of the privacy policy that was during a PR, so not any official same thing. So I don't know if it's the same people that contacted you, Brian, but probably as you propose some enhancements, it could be good to create a new issue and discuss what to add.
Let me read this issue and see if it overlaps sufficiently, and if not, I'll open a new one.
Cool. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, next person on the agenda is Andrew.
Okay, so hey everyone, I am having local test runs failing, and this was reproduced on other Mac OS M1 machine. So this happens both on head of master and on the latest JupyterLab version. It's connected to Canvas Pixman dependency. I'm looking to see if this affects only me or us rather, or this is like a more a global problem. Maybe it's specific to Apple Silicon machines too. So there is an issue I created, 13938. If you have any advice on how to fix this, or if you can reproduce this and also have this problem, please let me know. Particularly, you can just post in that issue. So I will also link this issue in the chat. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Hey, Andrew. As I commented on the issue, one of the trouble is Canvas, because Canvas is a NPM package that's a binary one, and so the M1 processor and the following one are a weird architecture, let's say, compared to, like, it's a recent architecture, let's call it like this. So it may be tough to figure out how to find a workaround.
This may be
sorry.
This may be a situation where M1 owners like Andrew and myself might have to like contribute binaries or something. I'm not sure what's involved with that, but like, yeah, the AMD 64 architecture, because I run into the same problem, just doesn't have pre-built binaries for Canvas.
Oh, so that's one of the reasons why I'm calling this out. I want to understand if this is my particular problem of my machine or a greater problem that affects subsection of the JupyterLab population. So yeah, we can talk about this later with Jason, but if anyone else can reproduce this, please post in the thread. That would be useful. Thank you.
Knowing that it can be useful to learn a bit about that, because more and more users start to have that kind of machine. So we will probably see more in the future issue related to that architecture.
Have you seen that, Frederick, or do you have an access to M1 machine?
No, I do not. I see William as a hand raised. Yeah.
We used like $2,000 of the donations to Sage to buy an M1 Max Studio with 32 gigs of RAM, and I've given a bunch of accounts to Sage developers, and I'm happy if anybody writes me, I can give you an account. It's just SSH access, but you know, it's a handy way to get access to a good M1 Max processor. So just email me. I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
But we're using it for lots of little build stuff and whatever.
William, I'll do that if I won't be able to reproduce.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you get another separate machine to test on.
Thanks, William. That's generous.
Thanks to the donors who paid for it.
Okay, so next up is Frederic.
So we finally have released JupyterLab 3.6.0, yay! And we have already a 3.6.1. So for people that did not follow up the reason for 3.6.1, Darian has worked to provide in the service package the API to cover the new event system and the new event API from Jupyter Server v2. And he used async iterable that are available since quite some times in most of the web browser, but that were not available in the type target that we were using to produce the JavaScript assets. So at the time we thought it was good enough, so we decided to upgrade the target and ship it like this. It brought issue in extension that were bumping JupyterLab because they were also having the same old target for their JavaScript asset. So I did a PR that's like reverting back the target to not have changed. So that's why there is a 3.6.1. And I added in the documentation some information in the migration guide, or you can fix the issue you can see in your extension. So basically the issue you will see in your extension is a TypeScript issue saying it doesn't know about the type async iterable or async iterator or something like that. And the way to solve it is to tune a bit your configuration of TypeScript. So And then I have another point. Last week we discussed where to place the code that we will be extracting for our real-time collaboration from the Jupyter core to the X Jupyter server YDoc. There's no JupyterLab RTC, so it is moved under our organization. But Jeremy points out that there are actually already another repository called simply RTC in the JupyterLab organization that I forget totally about at the time we discussed that. And so the question now is that what do we want to do? I probably should open a new issue on the Team Compass to discuss that. But basically, the repository, the first one, just RTC, is an older experiment that was, I think, mainly led by Sol and Eric, trying auto merge for a live collaboration. And so, yeah, we probably should clarify the situation to avoid confusion for users or developers interested to see what we are doing for RTC.
Yeah, I remember opening an issue about archiving that repo. I think it's like 1 year old or even more, but maybe it makes more sense to just merge them as Mike suggests on the chat. But at least, yeah, I was just thinking that if someone comes to the org and search for RTC and finds, 2 results, then they might be confused, where the work is happening.
Merging them sounds like a good idea. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay, does anyone want to do it?
Yeah, I can take the charge of that thing. Hopefully it will be easy.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome. Yeah, Mike, definitely that's my plan to maybe create a new branch for the new code and keep the older one. So yeah, I think it will make stuff easier than just copy everything on top of the other one with the new history overriding everything. I look to do that. Thanks for the suggestion.
Cool, great. Okay, and Jeremy, you're up.
Yeah, it's just a quick update that there is a new Notebook 7 pre-release, and most of the time, once there is a JupyterLab 4 pre-release, there is a Notebook 7 pre-release shortly after. So it's just a reminder that if you would like to test it and check things, whether your extension works with Notebook 7, then please do. Either locally by installing the notebook package or on Binder. I maintain a gist that I posted in the note, so it's a bit easier to try it. And there is, I posted also a link to a pull request that I opened 2 weeks ago, and that came up several times, like when talking to people using JupyterLab for like teaching in general, and sometimes they use the code console, and to them, like having the prompt at the bottom of the code console is a bit awkward sometimes when they cast their screen on like a bigger screen in the classroom, and there is an issue in the lab repo that I think is 7 years old also that suggests making that configurable. So I started something. It should also be possible to try it on Binder. Otherwise, you have a screencast in the top comment. And one suggestion was to put the input prompt at the top and then reverse the order of the history. So the current state of this PR does this, but maybe we want to tweak some other things, or at least make that configurable. So it's out there if you're interested. And I think that's it. The last point was about the RTC repo that we already discussed before.
Cool. I can imagine lots of ways of messing with the code console's layout. one thing that would be kind of cool and we're pretty far from is something like the configuration of like toolbars where you can drag stuff on and off. It'd be cool if you could take the two, components basically, or the three components with toolbar being one of them, and just drag them into an order and lock it or something. But we're kind of far from that. It just seems like maybe a thing to consider, making more layout configurable. It seems kind of cool. Okay, Tony, you are up next.
Sorry. Yeah. Accessibility meeting after this. If anybody wants to join, starts 15 minutes after the hour. Agenda's in HackMD. Put anything in there you want to talk about. If you've got any questions about accessibility, we're happy to spend some time answering those too. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And we have a post from Nick, who is not on the call right now. And it links to an issue about JSON schema validation, which is a subject near and dear to Nick's heart. And I think it's about standardizing on these things. And
so he's been so React JSON schema form 5 just came out, and that upgrades to AJV 8. So this is going into starting some of those upgrades and moving to the new AJV 8, which has some like really nice validation features. It's a little bit faster and stuff. So that's the best I know from there.
okay, do you know what these two subpoints mean?
I can look. I speak Nick. Okay. All right. So AJV8 has a safe validation mode, which I think like it's something to the effect like the types are pre-compiled or something. Yeah, you just are not running unsafe code at any point, but you can. This avoids some unsafeness. There's some security. And then the goal would be to make it easy for extension authors to just extend schema form, which would then mean you'd write your type interface. And by writing your type interface, you would get your UI as a result. So it would really help standardize a lot of the, basically the UI would be built off of schema. It brings some standardization there. Hopefully other folks will be able to use that. I know he's put it in some of the in a few deathbeds projects as a test and been successful there.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just the other bullet is to say, instead of having as a public API the React component from React JSON schema form, it may be interesting to expose a widget so that, for example, if there is a new major version of that library, we can update it within the 3x cycle, for instance. So it will make like our life easier for deciding to move forward. So yeah, that's the second bullet.
All right, so we don't have anything under additional discussions, and we do have an aforementioned plan to triage some issues, but I'll give people a moment if there's something they'd like to add before we jump to that activity. Okay. So do you guys think I should stop the recording for the triage or keep recording? I can't remember what we did last time.
I think we did the triage during the recording,
Okay,
but we also really went like over our time limit.
Okay.
So, and I also see no additional discussion scheduled today. Does anybody have anything that they wanted to talk about off the record?
okay, how about this? Good point, Tony, in the chat. Show of hands for continuing the recording until the hour is over. It's funny, you ask a yes, no question where the easiest thing to answer is yes, and everyone remains silent. That actually is pretty compelling evidence. All right, everyone brace yourselves. I'm stopping the recording.